Hey there. So we're going to be going over another reptile group here with talking about what is a turtle. So when we're talking more specifically about turtles, we're talking about the order called Testudines. Testudines literally is the word for tortoise, so that's what that translates to. So this includes all turtles, tortoises, and terrapins. These animals are pretty closely related to one another, despite us giving different names for them. They all have a shell that's either bony or cartilaginous. So again, the bony shells are what we're more used to, more tough. But there are soft-shelled turtles with cartilaginous shells. They all have a fairly long lifespan, all things considered. These are some of the record holders for lifespans among animals. And they all have a three-chambered heart. So again, we're seeing what we see with most of our reptiles in that regard. When we talk about testudines and reproduction, the males have a single medial penis. Some males go through mating rituals to actually attract females or to get rid of other males, so it just kind of depends on what species we're talking about and what they do. The plastron part of the shell, so again, the plastron is the bottom part, the carapace refers to the top. The plastron part of the shell is different for males to be able to mount. So because of the domed shell of the females here on top, males have kind of a depression on the bottom part of their shell so that they are able to successfully mount without constantly falling off of the female. So this is part of how we talk about telling male and female turtles apart from one another. Sperm can be stored by some females for up to 4 years. Again, they can wait until conditions are ideal for them to lay their eggs. And they are what we refer to as oviparous. They are egg-laying animals. All of our turtles are egg layers. So this video, again, if you're looking here on the presentation on Classroom and you click this link, this kind of shows some of the courtship behavior between different pond turtles. Here we're talking about red-eared sliders. So the males here on the left are smaller, females quite larger, but they have these long fingernails that they use, and they'll kind of rub them on the female's body. They'll block the female with them. They have a few different strategies they use in that courtship ritual. So when they're drumming those fingernails on the female, the shell does have nerve endings in it, so the female can feel those fingernails when they scrape on there. So talking a little bit more here about sexual dimorphism. So when we say dimorphism, di meaning two, and morphism talking about the shape, we're talking here about the differences between males and females. So of those two forms, we see some physical differences between them. We already talked about the plastron part of the shell being concave in male turtles. Males sometimes have what we call an extended gular scute. So again, as you can see right here, let me move the video for a little bit. Here's the head of the turtle, and right underneath it here is this pronounced kind of jutting out area in the shell, and that helps them to flip over rival males whenever they are competing for females or for space in general. We already talked about some males have those elongated toenails on the front, and then males tend to have longer tails, as we can see in this diagram here on the bottom. This is partially because that single medial penis is partially stored within the tail. Again, for the penis to be able to clear the plastron, it's helpful if it's this far back in the animal's body so that it'll actually come out in a space that is beyond the edge of the shell so that it can be inserted into the female's cloaca. This video here just shows a competition between two desert tortoise males, and again, they use that gular scute to try and flip each other over. So again, if you're looking at it on Classroom, look at that clip. When we talk about the diet with testudines, it's variable mostly by age. Adult turtles tend to eat more plants and invertebrates. They don't have as much of a need for pure protein, but young turtles tend to eat a lot of meat. Again, this can vary a lot by species, but younger turtles tend to eat more of that meat to help get protein and grow quickly, whereas older individuals may not eat as much. Many turtles eat carrion, so that's what we're seeing in this picture here on the top right. Turtles, of course, are known for being pretty darn slow, but when they eat material that's already dead, they don't have to worry about catching it. They can already find it and get the protein from it. We also talk about many sea turtles eat jellyfish. That's part of their natural diet. And then this clip here talks specifically about the feeding strategies of the alligator snapping turtle. They actually have a little part of their tongue that looks like a worm that they wiggle around. So if you click on that clip, you'll see how they use that to lure in prey. and that way they don't have to expend as much energy to try and get it. Talking about locomotion, so again, between testudines, their ability in terms of locomotion and the way that their limbs are shaped varies a lot with their habitat, especially when we're talking about terrestrial versus aquatic. Land tortoises tend to have these legs that are almost what we call elephantine. They're almost elephant-like to help raise their body up so they can actually move at a decent clip on land. Again, not the fastest things in the world, but pretty decent. When we look at pond turtles, they have legs that are somewhat like the land tortoises, but they have some webbing between them to help them move through the water and paddle through the water. So they're able to kind of move between water and land as they need to. And then when we look at sea turtles that spend almost all their time in the water except when they need to lay eggs, we see that the front fins have evolved into really wide flippers that help push the whole body along, and the little back feet are still kind of there to help with steering and things like that, but they don't nearly do as much work as those front feet for helping propel them through the water. So again, it all depends on habitat as to what their limbs look like. And here, again, are video examples of how these different limbs function. This one shows a box turtle moving, again, more land-adapted testudine and how they move. This one shows footage of pond turtles swimming underwater. And this one talks a little bit about some research that was done with some scientists about sea turtles traveling on land, how they use their flippers for motion inside of the sand. So it kind of focuses on how they're a little awkward on land, but they still have some abilities that help them there, and how it's led to some innovations in robotics. And then finally here, if we're looking at the defense mechanisms for testudines, this is the part that we probably feel is pretty obvious. Their shell is the main thing that we're looking at. Now the shell is fused to the spine and ribs. You can kind of see here in this cross section or with this abandoned turtle shell, you can see that the spine is part of the shell. It's not like in a lot of cartoons where the turtle can just leave from the shell and then come back later like it's its house. This is part of their body. So the shell has to stay connected to their body because it's connected to their spine. Again, the carapace is the top portion, plastron is the lower portion. The little tiny pieces, like when you think about each little like tile that's part of a turtle shell, that's what we refer to as the scutes. They also shed as these animals grow up. So again, as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, those little pieces will start to flake off whenever they grow larger. They can retract their neck inside in most cases. There are what we call side neck turtles. They have to kind of fold it more on the side by comparison. But again, we see some cartilaginous shells with our soft-shelled turtles and bony shells with most of our other turtles in this case. So I hope that this clarifies a little bit about what turtles are as far as the types of reptiles they are and what kind of constitutes what makes them unique.